right, let's jump into this deep dive and really dissect this whole UNEP FI strategy for London Insurance Week 2025. It's a big one. London, it's like the central nervous system of global insurance. And with, climate change breathing down our necks, well, UNEP FI is using this massive platform to really push for some serious change. And we're going to unpack why all this matters to, everyday folks like us.
What I find really interesting is that they're going beyond just like the talk, the typical sustainability speeches. UNEP FI is bringing in like hard-hitting real-world examples showcasing new insurance products that are pretty groundbreaking. It's about proving that going green isn't just, ethically sound. It can actually be a major win for insurers' bottom lines.
Yeah, from what I've been reading, it seems like they're not messing around. This is a multi-pronged strategy they've got going on. One of their big focuses is this thing called the Principles for Sustainable Insurance, or PSI for those in the know. Can you give us the quick and dirty on what that actually means, in practice for these companies?
Basically, the PSI is like a blueprint. It's for how to bake these ESG considerations into every single part of an insurance company's operations. It's not about just like offering a green product here and there just to check a box. This is about a fundamental shift in how companies assess risk, how they underwrite policies, handle claims, even how they make investment decisions.
So it's like, if a car company just slaps a hybrid engine in one of their models, but their whole factory is still running on coal, that's not really sustainability, right? This is about a much deeper level of integration.
Exactly. And another critical piece of this puzzle is transparency. Especially when it comes to climate risk disclosure. They're pushing for these standardized frameworks that would essentially force insurers to clearly report how exposed they are to climate-related risks, kind of like a nutrition label, but for climate change.
Okay, so instead of burying these risks in some fine print, it's more like, bam, here's your climate risk scorecard for the world to see. I can see how that would light a fire under some companies, to clean up their act.
Absolutely. This kind of transparency empowers everyone involved. Investors, regulators, even consumers can make more informed decisions. It's about dragging those climate risks out into the open so everyone understands the potential financial impacts.
Which are getting kind of hard to ignore these days, right? I mean, just turn on the news, it's wildfire, megastorms, rising sea levels. It's not just an environmental issue anymore. It's hitting us right in the wallet.
Right. And that leads us to another fascinating piece of UNEP FI's strategy, green underwriting and innovation. They're pushing insurers to develop new types of coverage that actually incentivize businesses to become more sustainable.
Ooh, okay, now we're talking. What kind of innovative products are we talking about here?
So imagine insurance policies that actually give companies a reward for reducing their carbon footprint or investing in renewable energy. That's a pretty powerful incentive, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like insurance becomes a driver of positive change, not just a safety net after something bad's already happened.
Right. Or think about microinsurance schemes. These are designed specifically for communities that are most vulnerable to climate change, like those in coastal areas or regions that are prone to drought. It's about making sure insurance is accessible and affordable for everyone, not just the wealthy.
So it's about building resilience in the face of, a planet that's changing.
Yeah.
Especially for those who are most at risk. Okay, this is making me see insurance in a whole new light.
And tying all of this together is their focus on resilient investment portfolios. They're saying, hey, insurers, instead of pouring your money into fossil fuel companies, why not shift those investments towards things like green bonds or renewable energy projects?
Right, put your money where your mouth is. Pretty bold move trying to influence how an entire industry invests its capital. So how exactly are they planning to get all of this across at London Insurance Week? Are they just going to stand up on a soapbox and lecture everyone?
Actually, they're taking a much more strategic and engaging approach. Think interactive workshops, compelling case studies, even showcasing some of those next-gen insurance products we were just talking about.
So it's less about preaching and more about showing the insurance world what a sustainable future could look like in action.
Exactly. It's about highlighting the tangible benefits and making a strong business case for sustainability.
Which seems pretty smart considering all the different players in the insurance world. You've got these giant corporations, policymakers, individual agents. Getting everyone on the same page is no easy feat.
It's definitely a challenge, but by tapping into the power of storytelling and highlighting real-world successes, UNEP FI is hoping to convince the industry that sustainability isn't just about doing good, it's good for business.
Right, and with climate risks becoming more and more impossible to ignore, it seems like insurers are starting to get the memo.
They are. It's no longer a question of if climate change will impact their bottom line, it's when and how severely. By promoting sustainable practices, UNEP FI is basically saying, hey, we can either adapt now and thrive or ignore the writing on the wall and face potentially catastrophic losses down the line.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But in this case, the cure could be incredibly costly for the entire industry. So they've got a clear mission and a smart strategy. But let's take a step back for a second. Why should all of this matter to someone who's not an insurance executive or a climate scientist?
That's a great question, because ultimately climate change is a global problem. And we need every sector, including the massive financial power of the insurance industry, to be part of the solution.
And what's encouraging is that there seems to be a growing realization within the insurance world that sustainability isn't just some feel-good PR move. It's actually crucial to their long-term survival.
Absolutely. Climate change is no longer some distant threat. We're seeing its impact on insurance claims right now. Think about the skyrocketing costs of natural disasters, the growing number of properties in high-risk areas that are becoming uninsurable, the potential for mass displacement of populations due to rising sea levels and extreme weather events.
So is it fair to say that by pushing for sustainable practices, UNEP FI is essentially trying to help the insurance industry avoid a potential meltdown?
That's one way to put it. They're saying, look, the world is changing, and you need to adapt or risk becoming obsolete. But it's not just about mitigating risk. There's a massive opportunity here, too.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this opportunity.
Well, think about it. Insurers have this incredible understanding of risk. They analyze data model scenarios, assess potential threats all day long. That expertise makes them uniquely positioned to not only protect people from the impacts of climate change, but also help prevent it from getting worse.
So they can be proactive instead of just reactive. Instead of just paying out claims after a disaster, they can be part of the solution to prevent those disasters from happening in the first place.
Exactly. And this can lead to a whole new world of opportunities, new markets, even entirely new types of insurance products. Remember those micro-insurance schemes we were talking about? Those are a perfect example.
Right. Those could provide a vital safety net for vulnerable communities while also helping to create a more resilient and equitable world. This is really making me rethink the role of insurance. It's not just about paying out claims after something bad happens. It can be a powerful tool for positive change.
And that's the message UNEP FI is bringing to London Insurance Week. It's about showing the world that the insurance industry can be a hero in this story.
Okay, so UNEP FI is making a pretty compelling case for sustainable insurance. But let's be realistic for a second. We all know change is hard, especially in a massive, complex industry like insurance. I'm sure there are plenty of skeptics and vested interests who are digging in their heels and resisting this whole sustainability thing.
Oh, absolutely. Change is never easy, especially when it comes to disrupting the status quo. But there are some pretty strong forces pushing in the other direction, too.
Like what makes you think this time might be different?
Well, for one thing, consumer demand is shifting. People are increasingly choosing to support businesses that align with their values, and sustainability is becoming a major factor in those decisions. Insurers are starting to realize that if they want to attract and retain customers, especially younger generations, they need to demonstrate a genuine commitment to ESG.
So it's not just about ethics anymore. It's about staying competitive in the marketplace. Interesting.
Exactly. And it's not just customers. Top talent is also more likely to be attracted to companies that are walking the walk when it comes to sustainability. This is a big deal for the insurance industry, which is facing a talent shortage and needs to attract young professionals who are passionate about making a difference.
Okay, so UNEP FI is playing a long game here. They're not just focused on immediate wins. They're trying to shift the entire culture of the industry. But that's no small task. How do you even begin to change the mindset of an entire industry?
Well, London Insurance Week is a big part of that strategy. It's a chance to bring together all the key players, insurers, reinsurers, brokers, investors, regulators, and start a conversation about the importance of sustainability. It's about creating a buzz, showcasing success stories, and hopefully planting the seeds for a major transformation.
So it's not just about speeches and presentations. It's about creating a sense of urgency, a shared understanding that the future of the industry is intertwined with the future of the planet. But even if they manage to get everyone excited about sustainability, how do they translate that enthusiasm into concrete action?
That's where things get really interesting, and that's exactly what we'll be diving into next.
All right, I'm on the edge of my seat. We're back and ready to dig into the how-tos. How does UNEP FI plan to turn all this talk about sustainability into, boots on the ground change within the insurance industry?
Well, they're going into London Insurance Week with a very clear objective. It's less about feel-good vibes and more about show me the money. Concrete commitments, timelines, targets no more of those vague promises, to do better.
I like the no-nonsense approach. So what would some examples of those concrete actions be?
One major push is for this industry-wide commitment to achieve net zero operations. So insurers would pledge to totally wipe out their carbon footprint.
So not just offsetting emissions, but actually reducing them to zero. That's pretty ambitious.
It is ambitious, yeah, but it's also becoming more and more essential, and it goes beyond just their own operations. UNEP FI wants to see insurers align their entire business with this goal. So underwriting investments, the whole 9 yards.
But how do you actually make that happen? I mean, are insurers going to just willingly overhaul their entire business model just because UNEP FI says so? There's got to be a bit more to it, right?
Well, UNEP FI has a lot of influence, within the industry. They're known for setting standards and best practices, and they're working closely with regulators and policymakers to create a more supportive environment for sustainable insurance. But at the end of the day, they need to show insurers that this isn't just the right thing to do ethically, it's also the smart thing to do for their bottom line.
So appeal to their sense of self-preservation, I guess. If ignoring climate change could lead to financial ruin, maybe embracing sustainability starts to look a little more appealing.
Exactly. UNEP FI is coming with hard data,
Mm-hmm.
in real-world case studies that show how incorporating sustainability can actually improve profitability. They're basically saying, look, the future is sustainable whether you like it or not, so either get on board and thrive or get left behind.
So they're making a strong business case for sustainability. But let's not forget about the people who actually buy insurance, everyday people like you and me. How does this all trickle down to the average insurance customer?
That's a great question because ultimately this is about creating a better future for all of us. One major benefit for customers is access to new, innovative insurance products that address the growing risks we face because of climate change. We're starting to see the emergence of these climate parametric covers, for example.
Climate parametric covers sounds a bit sci-fi. What are those exactly?
So imagine this. You live in an area that's prone to flooding, right? With the traditional insurance policy, you'd have to wait for an assessor to come out, assess the damage, and then go through this whole claims process. It can be slow, bureaucratic, especially when you're dealing with a natural disaster.
Right, because in those situations, people need help fast, not weeks or months later.
Exactly. But with a climate parametric cover, it works differently. It pays out based on a predefined climate trigger, so like a certain amount of rainfall or wind speed. It's not tied to actual physical damage. So if the rainfall in your area exceeds that pre-agreed threshold, bam, the policy automatically pays out, regardless of whether your house actually flooded or not.
Wow, that's efficient. It cuts through all that red tape and gets money into the hands of people who need it quickly. Are there any downsides to this kind of insurance?
Well, like any new technology, there are kinks to work out. Ensuring data accuracy is crucial, and making sure these policies are accessible and affordable for everyone. There are also questions about how to handle situations where the trigger is met, but no actual damage occurs. But it's a really innovative approach to dealing with climate risk.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a real game changer for people in disaster-prone areas. What other kinds of innovative insurance products are we looking at?
Another area UNEP FI is really promoting is microinsurance. These are small-scale, affordable insurance products designed specifically for low-income communities who are often most exposed to climate risks.
So it's about creating a safety net for those who are most vulnerable who might not have access to traditional insurance products.
Exactly. It's recognizing that climate change doesn't impact everyone equally. Those who have the least resources are often hit the hardest. Microinsurance can help those communities build resilience and adapt to a changing climate.
So there's this real social justice element to this whole conversation about sustainable insurance. It's not just about protecting profits, it's about protecting people.
Absolutely. And that's a message UNEP FI is really pushing. An insurance industry that's not only environmentally sustainable, but also socially inclusive.
Okay, so we've got these concrete commitments, innovative products, a focus on social equity. It sounds like UNEP FI has a pretty comprehensive plan for reshaping the insurance industry. But I imagine getting all of these moving pieces to line up is a pretty massive undertaking.
It definitely takes more than just, good intentions. One of their key strategies is fostering collaboration, not just within the insurance industry itself, but across different sectors.
Collaboration. So it's not just insurers talking to each other, but engaging with other industries, experts, and even, communities on the ground.
Exactly. They're bringing together insurers, reinsurers, investors, regulators, policymakers, basically anyone who has a stake in creating a more sustainable future. They're also partnering with tech companies, NGOs, researchers to tap into their expertise and find creative solutions.
So it's about creating a whole ecosystem of innovation around sustainable insurance, drawing on all these different perspectives and skills.
That's the idea. And that's where the real potential for breakthroughs lies. Imagine using satellite data and AI to more accurately assess climate risks, or partnering with community organizations to develop microinsurance products that are tailored to local needs.
That's cool. It feels like we're moving beyond just tweaking the existing system and actually reimagining what insurance can be in a climate-changed world.
It is a really exciting time to be in this space, but we can't forget about the crucial role that governments and regulators play in all of this.
Right, because even with all the best intentions and all these innovative ideas, there are limits to what the industry can achieve on its own. It needs a supportive regulatory environment, right?
Absolutely. Governments can create incentives for sustainable practices, things like tax breaks for green investments or penalties for companies that fail to meet certain environmental standards. They can also mandate things like climate risk disclosure, which would force all insurers to be transparent about their exposure to those climate-related risks.
So using policy to kind of nudge the industry in the right direction, creating a level playing field where everyone's playing by the same rules.
Exactly. And UNEP FI is working closely with policymakers around the world to advocate for regulations that support the transition to sustainable insurance. They understand this isn't just about market forces. It's about creating a regulatory framework that reflects the urgency of the climate crisis.
So we've talked about concrete commitments, innovative products collaboration, and the role of government regulations. It's starting to feel like UNEP FI is building a pretty solid case for a major transformation of the insurance industry. But I guess it all comes down to this: how does this impact the world beyond insurance? What's the bigger picture here?
That's what we'll dig into next.
All right, so we've been deep in the weeds here with UNEP FI's big plans for the insurance industry. But let's zoom out for a minute. What happens in the insurance world doesn't stay in the insurance world, right?
Nope, not at all. The insurance industry is so intertwined with the global economy. Any changes within it, they can have ripple effects that touch almost every part of our lives.
Okay, help me connect the dots. How does a more sustainable insurance industry, actually impact my life, my everyday life?
Well, just think almost every company, big or small, needs insurance to function right. And as insurers start factoring in sustainability into their risk assessments and underwriting decisions, it creates this powerful incentive for businesses to become more sustainable themselves.
So it's like this domino effect. If a company wants to get affordable insurance, they need to prove they're taking sustainability seriously, and that leads to a greener supply chain, more eco-friendly products, and a more sustainable economy overall.
Exactly. It's not just about insurers cleaning up their own act. It's about using their leverage to push for change across the entire business world.
Instead of my choices feeling like a drop in the bucket, it's like the whole system is amplifying those choices.
Right. And consider the potential impact on climate change, too. If businesses adopt more sustainable practices, we'll see fewer greenhouse gas emissions, cleaner air, and water, a healthier planet for everyone.
So maybe my commute's a little less smoggy, the stuff I buy is a little more eco-friendly, and my kids inherit a slightly less messed up planet. And all because the insurance industry stepped up.
That's the idea.
This could be a real game changer.
It really could. It goes beyond just the environmental stuff, too. A sustainable insurance industry can really speed up the shift to a cleaner energy system.
We talked about that earlier, right? Insurers pulling their money out of fossil fuels and putting it into renewable energy. Is that really enough to make a difference, though?
It's a huge part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But remember, it's not just about divestment, it's also about investment. As insurers focus more on climate risks and opportunities, they're more likely to back the companies and technologies that are building a low-carbon future.
So instead of funding the polluters, they're funding the innovators.
Right. Investing in next-generation, clean energy, climate adaptation technologies, all sorts of innovations that can help us deal with climate change.
This is starting to feel like a win-win. The insurance industry manages their risks, businesses get funding for sustainable projects, and the planet gets a much-needed break. But what about the social side of things? How could a greener insurance industry actually improve people's lives, especially those who are most vulnerable?
Well, we've already touched on microinsurance and how it can provide a safety net for low-income communities. But it goes way beyond that. When the insurance industry embraces sustainability, it often leads to a stronger emphasis on social impact and solutions that benefit everyone.
So it's about acknowledging that climate change and social inequity are connected. and using insurance as a tool to create a more just and equitable world.
Exactly. Imagine insurers offering products that cater to marginalized communities like affordable health insurance or disaster insurance for areas that are most susceptible to climate disasters.
Okay, I'm getting the bigger picture now. We're not just talking about tweaking things here and there. It's about harnessing the power of the insurance industry to create a more sustainable and equitable world for everyone. But let's be real for a second. This is a huge undertaking. Are there any downsides to this whole sustainability thing? Could it create new problems, maybe unintentionally disadvantage certain groups?
That's a really important point to bring up. Any big shift like this is bound to come with challenges and tough questions.
Yeah.
For example, if insurance becomes more expensive for businesses that don't meet certain standards, how do we make sure it doesn't unfairly impact smaller companies or those in developing countries? These are things that will require careful thought and collaboration to address.
So it's not just about rooting for the good guys. It's about acknowledging that things are complicated and there might be trade-offs.
Right. And it's also important to remember change takes time, especially in big industries. This whole transition to sustainable insurance, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
True. But it does seem like things are starting to move. With UNEP FI leading the way, governments getting involved, and people demanding better options, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll see real progress.
I am too. London Insurance Week 2025 could be a turning point. If UNEP FI can get the industry to rally around sustainability, it could set off a chain reaction that changes not just insurance, but the entire global economy.
It does feel like we're on the verge of something big. What seemed radical just a few years ago is quickly becoming the norm.
And that's a good thing. The old way of doing things just isn't sustainable anymore. We need a new model, one that puts people and the planet first.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive. It's been a really fascinating conversation. But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. If the insurance industry can embrace sustainability, what other industries might follow suit? And what kind of world could we create if every part of the economy put people and the planet at the top of the priority list? It's an exciting thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of sustainable insurance. We'll be back next time with another thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.